The old graveyard was creepy even in daylight. Sarah stood at the rusted gate, the iron bars twisted like claws. Double, triple, quadruple dared. No way was she backing out now. Her friends giggled, huddled by the streetlight, their faces blurred in the darkness.
"Midnight!" one of them yelled, her voice echoing in the stillness. "You have to stay until midnight!"
Sarah took a deep breath and pushed open the gate. The rusty hinges groaned like a scream. She shivered, pulling her jacket tighter. The dare was simple. Spend 1 hour in the graveyard alone until midnight. Easy, right? She took a hesitant step onto the overgrown path, the gravel crunching under her shoes. Each step felt heavier, the darkness seeming to press in on her. The giggling from her friends faded behind her. Sarah was alone. The air grew colder as she walked deeper into the graveyard. Shadows from gnarled trees twisted into menacing shapes. Sarah kept her eyes on the path, her heart thudding in her chest. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig made her jump. She reached a small clearing, a crumbling stone angel watching over the graves. The moon hung heavy in the sky, casting long, eerie shadows. Sarah checked her watch. 11:15. Only 45 minutes. She sat down at the base of the angel statue, pulling her knees close. The stone was cold against her back.
Sarah tried to ignore the feeling of eyes on her, the prickling sensation that she wasn't alone. A low wind rustled through the trees, sounding like a whisper. Sarah shook her head. It was just the wind, but deep down, a tiny voice whispered, "What if it's not?"
The whispers started subtly, like the wind through dry leaves. Unintelligible murmurs that seemed to come from all directions. Sarah strained to hear, her breath catching in her throat. Were they real, or just her imagination playing tricks? The whispers grew louder, more insistent. They swirled around her, cold and menacing. Sarah couldn't make out any words, but the tone was unmistakable. Fear, cold, ancient fear, wrapped around her like a shroud. She wanted to run, to scream for her friends, but her feet felt rooted to the ground. Panic tightened its grip on her chest, making it hard to breathe. The whispers seemed to be closing in, pressing against her, suffocating her.
Sarah squeezed her eyes shut, wishing desperately for the first light of dawn.
You can't escape.
Stay with us.
Forever.
The voices were relentless, echoing in the darkness. The whispers stopped. An oppressive silence descended, heavier than the whispers had been.
Breathing heavily,
Sarah slowly opened her eyes, her heart pounding in her ears. The air shimmered in front of her. A figure began to coalesce, a translucent form taking shape. It glowed faintly, a cold, ethereal light. Sarah stared, paralyzed with terror as the figure solidified. It was tall and skeletal, its eyes burning like embers in the darkness. Its long, bony fingers reached out towards her, the air growing icy cold.
gasping, "Who are you?"
She choked out, her voice a mere whisper. The figure didn't answer. It took a step closer, its eyes fixed on her, burning into her soul. Sarah knew, with chilling certainty, that she was in terrible danger. Desperation surged through Sarah. She had to do something, anything, to protect herself. She remembered the old silver amulet her grandmother had given her, a symbol of protection passed down through generations. She fumbled in her pocket, her fingers closing around the cool metal. She pulled it out, holding it up towards the spectral figure. The amulet seemed to pulse with a faint light, growing brighter as the figure approached.
Echoing softly. Remember, Sarah, this amulet will protect you.
The figure hissed, recoiling from the light. It thrashed and writhed, its form flickering as if in pain. Sarah held the amulet tighter, focusing all her fear, all her desperation, into the ancient symbol. The light from the amulet intensified, bathing the graveyard in an unearthly glow. The figure screamed, a high-pitched wail that echoed through the night and then vanished. Silence descended once more, but this time it was a welcome silence. The oppressive fear that had gripped Sarah lifted, replaced by a wave of relief so intense it left her trembling. She looked around, her heart still pounding, but the graveyard was empty. The shadows seemed to have retreated, the trees no longer menacing. The first hint of dawn peeked over the horizon, painting the sky with streaks of pink and orange.
Sighing deeply,
Sarah stood there for a long moment, catching her breath, the amulet still warm in her hand. As the sun rose higher, bathing the graveyard in its warm light, she knew that she was safe. The ghostly figure was gone, banished by the power of the amulet and the coming of dawn. She walked out of the graveyard, her steps lighter now, the rising sun a symbol of hope and safety. She knew she would never forget this night, the terror and the relief, the encounter with the supernatural and the power of the amulet that had saved her, and she knew, with a certainty that went beyond the fear, that she would never spend another night in the graveyard again.